I am headed to the gym right now. My quads are super sore, so we're gonna be skipping any quad work today. And it's been a really long time since I just trained glutes, so that's what we're gonna do today. And I'm gonna do a full walkthrough and voiceover of all of the exercises, sets, reps, and everything that I'm doing for this glute workout. Okay, so starting off with a dynamic warm-up. I always do a dynamic warm-up before my workouts. I typically do a much more thorough one if I'm doing something like squats or deadlifts, but because we're just training glutes today, I'm doing a pretty quick, easy one. I'm just doing some forward flexion into deep squats. This is a really good dynamic stretch for squat depth, though, if you ever want to try it out. And then going into a deep lunge position, stretching back, getting a little hamstring stretch, and then rolling forward onto my toe to get a bit of a calf stretch. If you can't get this low, that's totally fine. I have pretty decent mobility, so I'm able to get this deep into this stretch. And then going into some 90-90s. These are really good for your hip flexors and just opening up your hips in general. And then usually if I am doing squats or deadlifts, I'll do some more deep squat sits, and potentially some calf rolling depending on how my squat mobility is looking. Then I started off with some barbell hip thrusts. It has been a minute since I've done hip thrusts with a barbell. I typically use the hip thrust machine at my gym, although I'm not really the biggest fan of it, so I may permanently switch to barbell hip thrusts. It's just the setup is so annoying. But I am starting off with, I believe I did 8 reps of hip thrusts here. You'll see in my next set, I do a better job at fully extending. So my reps do go down a little bit because I was honestly really surprised at how many reps I was able to get in here. And then I did 12 reps of glute bridges. This is just a half range of motion hip thrust, really focusing on that extension portion of the movement. And again, I'm not fully extending here, which I do fix in the next clip. Regardless, 20 reps with 225 pounds is still pretty brutal. So this is the second set. So like I said, this one, you'll see a little bit better hip extension at the top. I am sticking with 225 for all 3 sets. I'm going to be doing 3 total sets. Honestly, at this point, I was like already dying. There's just something a little bit different about these barbell hip thrusts than using a machine. I don't know, you can just get better contact or something like that. But again, I am really just taking my time here. So popping up into that second set, you can see here I am driving up much higher with my hips. I have this tendency to stop too low, which is really not great if we're really trying to focus on maximal glute development. So I think I got 8 reps here again. And then I think I did either 6 or 8 of those glute bridges, just focusing on basically like a little pulse at the top. You could do a slightly bigger range of motion if you wanted, but you can see I'm struggling a lot more on this set now that I'm performing full extension. Okay, and clearly I was starting to overheat at this point. My gym is very humid, so the jacket is already off. I'm honestly surprised I left it on for as long as I did. And jumping into this third set, I do think I also work on that, full extension at the top. You can see here with this angle that my knees are slightly abducted. I have strayed away from having my toes really wide or my feet really wide or my toes really wide. And I focus more on having my knees slightly abducted. And as always, we want to focus on having our knees at that 90-degree angle at the top. I believe for this set, I did 8 hip thrusts and I think 6 glute bridges to failure. You can see this is where I fail and it was rough. Okay, and then next up is going to be single leg step ups. Single leg is pretty obvious. Step ups, I'm using a bench here. I do recommend trying to find the most solid surface that you can for these guys, and preferably something lower than knee height. Any higher than that, you're going to have to use a lot of momentum to launch up. If you only have the option of a higher bench, I would recommend just doing body weight and maybe holding onto something on the side so that you're not pushing off with that back leg. But as you can see, I'm really trying to control the movement here, really slowly lowering down and then driving up through that front foot, because that is the leg that we are trying to focus on working, not our back leg. And you can see I'm pushing fairly close to failure as I'm slowing down at the top. And I did only film sets from one side. I think it's fairly obvious that you're going to want to perform them on both sides, but it's going to be a long video if I'm putting in each side. So Something I did want to note, if you are struggling with feeling step ups in your glutes, really focus on your knee position. So I like to put my foot a little bit further forward on the platform and really focus on letting my hips go back. This is going to keep your shin a little bit more vertical. If that knee moves forward, if it starts to go over the toes, you're going to get a lot more quad engagement. Now, if that's your goal, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we're trying to focus on the glutes here, we really want to keep that shin perpendicular to the ground and keep the knee over our heel or our midfoot as far back as we can feasibly keep it. Something else I like to implement when I'm doing step-ups, actually from this angle you can really see how far I'm letting my lower body come back to really keep that emphasis on the hinge at the glutes. I'm also keeping the weight, the majority of my weight, over my foot throughout the movement. So when I step down and back, I'm not rocking back. I'm rocking back a little bit, but for the most part, I'm keeping my shoulders and the weights closer to my front foot so that the weight is not shifting back as I'm coming down. And you can see I stumble a little bit there. I was getting pretty tired on these last few reps here. And then I think I did 3 sets of 10 for all of these. And this is by far one of my favorite movements that I've ever come up with. This is a weird variation of single leg deadlift that I came up with a really long time ago. But I really like it because a lot of people struggle with the stability element of single leg deadlifts, but they're such a good movement to really make sure that we are targeting the glutes in a unilateral way, but also with a hinge. So most, split squats, lunges, step ups, all those are going to be more squatting movements, whereas there's not a whole lot of single leg hinging movements other than a single leg or a B stance deadlift. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of B stance deadlifts just because it maintains more of a posterior pelvic position, which for me just puts more stress on my low back. So by having the foot up behind me on that bench, I get the added stability of having the foot on a surface, but my pelvis is able to anteriorly tilt a little bit more, allowing my hinge to occur to a greater degree and keeping some of the tension off of my back. So I did actually film a clip from the other leg that I'm working so that you could see what my non-working leg is doing. So as you can see, it's being stabilized on that bench behind me in order to keep that leg elevated, not use that leg for a whole lot in terms of muscle recruitment, but it will keep me stable. I feel so bad when I filmed this. That girl that walked by in front of my camera, she apologized to my camera. She's like, I'm sorry, because she knew that she walked right in front of it. But it's it's fine. It's a public gym, or it's not a public gym, but it's a gym. You can walk wherever you want to walk. I'm not going to get mad at you, but I'm sure I looked angry at the end of that set because I was dying. So I ended up moving my camera because I felt so bad because I was taking up that little aisle space. This gym, as great as it is very cramped. A lot of the stuff, especially in the dumbbell section, is very close together. So I didn't want to be blocking anything. So I apologize for the angle. It's not ideal. But at least you can kind of see what my legs are doing from a different angle. You can see how my foot is positioned as well as how I let my hips really drive back. That is one of the advantages of this movement over having your knee on the bench, which is another variation that I've seen. This allows you to really drive your hips back because the knee can also bend a little bit more. Whereas with the knee on the bench variation, you have a little bit less range of motion to be able to hinge back as much, which obviously for this, it's a hinge. That is where we get the maximal stretch at this point of the movement, is when our chest is completely bent over. And the more we drive those hips back, the more glutes we are recruiting. Okay, and then we're doing hyperextensions next. By this point in the workout, I am struggling. So these were really humbling for me. Usually I can do 15 for 3 sets, but I think I only managed to get 10 on the last set. So these were rough. I did start off these with slightly non-ideal form. I'm a little bit more bent over at the shoulders than I would typically like. I have moved away from the very, very curved back positioning that a lot of people engage in during hyperextensions because, to be honest, while it is great for eliminating some erector activity, you really struggle to get full hip extension if you are not allowing that spine to remain neutral, because you can't really fully extend at the top and really let those hips get into that fully straightened position. So if you do tend to feel a lot of erector activity, it's totally fine to have some more curvature to your spine, but also keep in mind it's not bad to strengthen those erectors as well. It's just sometimes they tend to take over more. And so in those cases, it's fine to bend over more. But I do think moving towards a more neutral back position is better. And I do just want to note that my knees are bent here. My heels are slightly elevated. This is to keep some tension off my hamstrings. I just feel a lot of sensation in my hamstrings when I do hyperextensions. So this just helps me feel it a little bit less because that sciatic nerve tends to be really, really active for me. And then once again, I am trying to get out of everyone's way, and you can see I am dying at this point. So it's kind of a weird angle, but you can at least see what my back positioning looks like here. Again, just slightly rounded at the shoulder. I think I only ended up doing a couple full extensions, and then I went into those little pulses that I tend to do at the top when I am starting to fatigue and burn out a bit. Oh, there we go. And I think I only got a couple here because I was struggling at this point. Yeah, look at that face. I'm crying. Okay, and these are iliac press backs. So this is a new movement to me. This is something, and as you can see, they take some adjustment. They take some hopping around to get into the correct position. I do think I am slightly externally rotating my femur here, so that is not ideal. Really trying to keep the knee over the foot in this position. But like I said, I am pretty new to these. I just started doing these recently. Definitely a new favorite for really targeting those upper glutes. Reminder, we cannot isolate the upper or lower glutes, but there is a lot of theory that certain movements, especially shortening movements, are really good for hitting the upper divisions of the glute max. So that is what these are designed to do. These are called iliac press backs, like I said. So the iliac division is that upper portion of your glutes. The reason that I really like these is that you get not only full hip extension, so a fully shortened position here, but then you also get a fully lengthened glute position when your knee is coming up and across your body. This angle is a little deceptive. My knee is coming across my midline. It's not a fully forward and back movement. It is moving in a diagonal motion. So this is a better angle to be able to see that. So I'm kicking back on about a 30-degree angle, and then I'm letting that knee come in front and across my midline toward my non-working side shoulder, like my left shoulder, if that makes sense. And that extra adduction, as well as forward motion, that extra flexion at the top, is really going to put maximal stretch on the glutes. I do find that I can push a lot more weight with these, and I do really like the just excessive range of motion that you're getting here. So this is a really good option. This is kind of what I've substituted for my glute medius kickbacks that I typically put in my glute training. Okay, yeah, here you can see that I have corrected my shin position a little bit on the other side. I know that this angle is very deceptive. It really does not look like that leg is coming across my body, but the other clip is a much better representation of what it looks like. And do feel free to hold onto the cable machine. I do like to have a more upright posture here, but if you need to bend over slightly to be able to reach that, that's fine. And do make sure that you are not kicking back too far when you're in that extended position. That can cause some back extension or some hip shifting, which can make you feel it more in your other leg or make you feel it in your low back. And also be careful where you put your hands. Sometimes different machines, you might grab onto where the cable is, so be careful with that. I think actually my hair was getting stuck in the cable machine right where my face is, so that was fun. It kept almost ripping out of my head, but do let me know if you end up trying this exercise. I do think this is going to deserve a permanent spot in my program because it is a fun one to do. Absolutely destroyed me, as you can tell. Let me know if you try it and if you like it, and please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there's any other workout videos or workout tips that you would like me to make videos on.